Hey y'all, it's the Country Notary. Hope you're having a great day. Hope you had a great week in business as well. As always, y'all, please hit the like button. Please subscribe to my channel and help my channel grow. Yes, I am begging. Please subscribe to my channel. Okay. Hope you had a great week in business, y'all. I wanted to give you guys a recap on the 10 house deal that basically fell into my lap a couple of weeks ago, and the progress that I've made on acquiring some of those properties as I progress along my journey to obtain my first investment properties and officially become a real estate investor. No longer dabbling in real estate and becoming an actual real estate investor. So if you haven't already done so, go back and watch my previous video on how 10 house deal basically fell right into my lap, and I'm right in the middle of working with the owner and going through the 10 houses and deciding how I will either obtain those houses for myself as a personal investment or wholesale them. And I talked about wholesaling in a couple of previous videos, and I'll talk about that a little bit in this video as well. So I decided early in June to teach myself through research, videos, reading, watching countless hours of videos and podcasts as I normally do, just like I did when I started my loan signing agent business. I decided to teach myself the wholesaling business, wholesaling, which is basically the opposite of retail. In the wholesale industry, wholesale real estate industry, wholesalers basically connect homeowners or property owners with cash buyers. And this process does not include utilizing real estate agents. So to summarize it, or to simplify it a little bit more, a property owner may decide to publish or post or list their property as a for sale by owner property, or as is, promote it, publish it, in various, ways. They could Craigslist, Facebook groups, etc., put a sign in the yard and advertise their property for sale as an as is for sale by owner property. And sometimes I question and ask myself, as I go through these various contacts and conversations throughout the week, why would someone want to try to sell their property by themselves with no experience and not even knowing if they're getting the best price for their property? And there's various reasons, of course. Sometimes because of speed, convenience, people are having to move quickly. Potentially, in the case that I'm going to talk about, the 10 house deal, this particular investor, who's also an investor, he's a landlord, wants to sell all 10 properties as quickly as possible. And in most cases, most of his properties are, I would say, not marketable as far as not marketable to the retail community, because most of the properties are in pretty rundown condition and need quite a bit of work, quite a bit of rehab. And in the experiences that I've had talking to local real estate agents, as well as my daughter, who's a real estate agent, or at least talking to the local real estate agents in my particular area, those types of properties aren't necessarily the most attractive properties that these real estate agents are, willing to spend time marketing, because they're just not in move-in ready condition, not even close to move-in ready condition. And I think, for the most part, traditionally, people looking for a home with a real estate agent are looking for a home that they can literally move in. And, we call those, or the industry refers to those as turnkey ready, move-in ready. And the properties that tend to be sold in the wholesale community, the for sale by owner community, as is community, literally are not move-in ready in most cases. And I'll talk about the houses that I've come across personally and the houses that I've been prospecting in my business. Most of these houses need heavy rehab, roofs, flooring. I mean, like literally subflooring, flooring, windows, sheetrock. You know, most of the time there's no HVAC. It's literally been removed from the property, or have lots of damages and need lots of repair. In most cases, need rehab all the way down to the studs and rebuilt. Similar to what you'll see on some of these shows where you have the home flippers, the DIY projects, the DIY, the HGTV type flipping shows, those types of houses. So we're talking about some, pretty rundown houses, and some of them maybe not as rundown, but like I said, some people just for some reason decide to sell their property with a sign in the yard for sale by owner. And there's a huge market of that in the United States. I can only obviously speak specifically about my area. I've mentioned in previous videos, we live in a semi-rural, industrial area, and because of an aging community, because of market conditions and the local economy, there's typically a vacant house on every street, and many of these houses have been vacant for multiple years. So I have seen my opportunity to contact these owners and propose to them contracting with me to wholesale their house. And hey, go off and do some research. Go to YouTube, go to the internet, do some research on wholesaling. There are, people, YouTubers like myself, or, well more advanced than myself, who have produced hundreds of videos on the topic. And I first started actually learning about wholesaling about a year ago from videos that I watched, Noel Randall specifically. And at the time I started watching those videos, I wasn't interested. It seemed like such a far-fetched and out of reach concept for me to be able to sell a property and with no experience, no money, no personal investment, I should say, and be able to make profits from it. And in many of her videos as well, quoting Noel Randall, she literally paid a mentor $30,000, I think she says $30,000 for a mentorship, and he taught her how to wholesale properties, and she started making, money, $5,000, $10,000, and eventually has built herself up to a huge real estate investing mogul and multimillionaire, of course. So it just seemed so out of reach. Seemed like something that, it sounds good in the video, but it just didn't seem like something I could personally do. And 1 year later, as in many cases, I got started doing the research, decided to jump in with both feet. And as it turns out, it was something that I could do all along. It was something that I could do all along, especially after loan signing for, the past year and a half, and gaining all that experience as a loan signing agent and a mobile notary, and pouring through, stacks and stacks and tons of real estate documents, learning from that experience. Now I realized that I know a lot more about the real estate industry than I gave myself credit for. And I'm using that experience and that knowledge to learn the real estate investing business. So it has been an interesting year. It's been a great journey. And I'm anticipating this wholesaling business, as well as just investing in general, to be another very exciting and very profitable journey for me as well. Because I'm not just interested in wholesaling, I'm more so interested in building a real estate portfolio for myself through wholesaling, but potentially and hopefully real soon acquiring rental properties so that I can start cash flowing more money for my business and building from there. Cash flowing more money for my business through rental properties, and then potentially start flipping properties. I have a whole, crew of contractors and other people that I've built relationships with over the past, several years. I've talked about that in a previous video as well. So when the opportunity presents itself, when the right property presents itself, I will be ready to jump in and flip a property, which has been a long-term goal for me and my daughter. We've talked about flipping properties and investing in real estate for a long time. So it's getting very close, getting very close. So 10 property deal fell right in my lap. Go back and watch that video, guys. And I'm gonna continue my discussion on where that deal has how that deal has progressed. Okay. So along the way, my primary goal was to obtain a property by the end of June. I partnered with Fund and Grow. Fund and Grow is a company that is helping me build business credit, and we started my partnership with Fund and Grow at the end of April. And initially, the goal was to obtain business credit, thousands of dollars in business credit, within about a 45-day period. So the 45-day period ended somewhere at the first week of June, and we're still not quite at the point where I have obtained that first round of business credit, that first round of funding. Now we're in the first week of July, just because of the iterations that Fund and Grow goes through with the credit bureaus and with the business credit card companies. I am basically in the second round of iterations on building my business credit, building my personal credit profile, cleaning up my personal credit profile, I should say, so that when they present me to these credit card companies, to these business credit card companies, they can present me in the best possible light. To summarize that, and this is a holiday weekend. On Tuesday, Wednesday next week, I will be talking to my Fund and Grow representative, because we're at the point now where my file is ready to be presented to the business credit community so that I can get my credit cards, guys, business credit cards. I planned on, my goal was to use my business credit cards when I get them to use them as a down payment on my investment properties. You know, always the goal of using other people's money. You hear that in, the industry, other people's money, OPM, to obtain these investment properties, get these investment properties under contract, get renters in there, and generate more cash flow for my business. And as time goes on, of course, use the cash flow from those business, pay the credit cards off, and repeat the process, and eventually refinance those properties into a lower interest rate with my local credit union, and repeat the process and build my real estate investment portfolio over time. And that is my goal. That is my timeline, I should say. And again, we're right at the first leg of that process right now. However, in the meantime, while I was waiting for the business funding to take place, I said to myself, well, there are other ways to make money in the real estate industry without actually having to put your personal investment in, without having to put your personal cash in. And wholesaling real estate was one that, again, was in the back of my mind. Had heard about it, had done some research on it, and kind of thought about it. But, for the past year and a half, as I've been doing loan signings, as a mobile notary loan signing agent, been very busy with school, with my 9-to-5 job as a high school teacher. And I literally just didn't have time to put the time into it and get started. So, of course, school is over now. We're in the summer. I've worked 3 weeks of summer school, and now that is over. And in the past few weeks, I've actually now had the time to research, study, and do the proper legwork and learn more about the wholesaling industry, more about wholesaling real estate. I also was fortunate to link up with a couple of individuals, a local investor, as well as a mentor that I met on Facebook, who basically took the time and taught me some things about how to properly assess a home and evaluate comps, how to make offers on houses, how to negotiate with sellers, and just some of the details of the business that some of the nuances of the business that you couldn't possibly know or learn from watching videos and reading, and that's helped me tremendously as well. And I talked about my first house. You go back, I have a video that I made on that I produced on the yellow house video, my first house that I got under contract. Sadly, the seller backed out. We canceled the contract, and she decided to go a different direction. But again, I did learn a lot through that opportunity. So I am no longer interested in wholesaling. I am actually now wholesaling real estate. I've actually made the step, and now I'm actually wholesaling real estate, as well as I can officially call myself a real estate investor, as a result of the 10 houses that fell into my lap a couple of weeks ago. So go back and watch that video, and then I'm going to in this video give you guys an update of where how that went and where I stand with this 10 house deal. A few days ago, I met with the owner, and we went and did a walkthrough of the 2 houses that are tenant occupied. He had been out of town for the last week or so, and when he got back into town, his administrative assistant, who I think also is his property manager, connected us. We met the other morning at one of the properties and met the tenant, let us in. I went in, took pictures, asked a few questions about the house, took pictures of the inside, had already took pictures of the outside because I went on a previous day. Drove over to the second property, did the same thing, and he and I then proceeded to go to a local restaurant and talk for about an hour and a half on my objectives as well as his objectives. And as you can imagine, I was very nervous to present myself as someone who, again, is interested in purchasing some of these properties for myself and or wholesaling them if my funding if I was unable to get funding for those properties. And as it turns out, the investor said yes. The investor said yes. He agreed to, and I'm just going to use this term because it's, basically the term that's on my mind right now. He agreed to allow me to, he agreed to contract with me for the 2 houses with the tenants. And I have now the option of purchasing those properties for myself, or if my funding doesn't, like I said, my funding is not successful, I will then market those houses out to the wholesale community of cash buyers that I've accumulated or networked with through the various groups that I'm a part of, as well as through some local cash buyers that I've met or dialogued with over the last several weeks. Now, as you can imagine, this was a very exciting and a somewhat, nervous situation as we're sitting there talking. And I hadn't met this man. We had only texted on the phone, had texted back and forth with his property manager. It's a very exciting opportunity. And when he agreed to, allow me to get those 2 houses under contract, it was quite a moment, a very big accomplishment for me. And as you can imagine, I was very thrilled. Right before the meeting, I talked to my daughter on the phone. My daughter's a real estate agent. And I talked to her on the phone. We've been playing phone tag for a couple of days, and talked to her on the phone. And she gave me some tips and some strategies on how to have that conversation with him and to, build that dialogue with him to get those houses under contract. And it worked. So there's 10 houses involved, as I mentioned. Previously, I had already gone through the list of the 10 houses. I had driven by each house, taken pictures, and the 2 houses that were occupied, he and I went through and tenant occupied and walked through those together. The other 8 properties, 5 of which are vacant, I drove by, took pictures of the interior, exterior, made some notes. I had a spreadsheet, made some notes, did some comparables with the numbers, the local comparables of houses that have sold in the area. I use PropStream. It's the app that I use. I pay a fee for using PropStream, a monthly fee for using PropStream. It's a very good tool. It gives you all types of data on properties, across the United States. So it's a very valuable tool. It's helped me a lot. Saves a lot of time. Had already run my numbers, had my spreadsheet, had summarized pulled all the data that I could find on those houses, and basically had my my offer prices already listed for each property based on my research. So when we sat down and talked, I was, basically as ready as I could be. Of the 5 houses, and so there's 5 houses that I went and walked through personally, the 2 that he and I walked through together, and there were the 7. There were 3 other properties that I had driven by. One was a big commercial property, a big, huge commercial property that I didn't, obviously feel comfortable with. I hadn't wholesaled any house yet, so wholesaling a big commercial property was probably something that may be out of reach right now. But again, I documented that. And then there were 2 others that I drove by that I couldn't verify the address. One was an empty lot. I couldn't, the address that they gave me wasn't accurate. And the other one, the last one, I call it the dog house. I went by it and it was vacant, overgrown landscaping. And it was right next to a house that had like 10 dogs in the backyard and a vacant lot on the other side. And it just looked really creepy on a really narrow, dark street. With a lot of overgrown trees, and I was like, I don't know how I'd market this house to anybody. So it was definitely number 10 on the list of the list of houses. So looked at those houses, and I prioritized them in the order that I thought that I would be able to do something with. So when we sat down and started talking, I gave him a little introduction, of myself, who I was, what my objectives were. He did the same thing. And through the dialogue, he goes, so you're basically a wholesaler? I said, well, yes, I'm a wholesaler, but I'm also interested in investing. I'm interested in purchasing some of these properties. I've been looking for properties that fit within my budget, of course, in my criteria. I'm a brand new investor. And knowing that, and based on the research that I have done, I realized that I have to find an opportunity that basically fits within the funding model that the bank, the credit union, or the funding, the lender that I've been speaking with, fit within the criteria of what they're willing to loan to a new investor. So we had that conversation. And at a point, I thought maybe when he realized that I was a wholesaler and I didn't just pull up with a whole suitcase full of cash, he might have been a little put off or offended. But he wasn't actually. The conversation went real well. Part of my strategy when talking to now he would be my 4th home, owner that I've spoken to. Part of my strategy when talking to these owners is to basically just present myself as, authentically and genuinely as possible, and make them understand my objectives, try to build a direct rapport, a comfortable rapport with them, so that moving forward, if we did decide to contract with each other and do business, I'd be comfortable dealing with them, and there was no gray or shadiness involved that I was going to, try to get their houses under contract and then go off and make a ton of money by, wholesaling them to the cash buyer community and make a huge profit, which for some reason that's maybe a little offensive to some sellers. But I just, let them know up front, if I can't obtain these properties for myself, yes, I do plan on wholesaling them. And we built that, dialogue. We had a really good meeting, built some great rapport. And at the end of that conversation, he decided to allow me to contract the 2 properties that were tenant occupied. So, at one point in the conversation, he actually said he had an experience with another wholesaler with a group of properties that he had for sale in Houston, and this particular person presented themselves as a investor and as a cash buyer, and they went under contract. At the end of the contract, the person hadn't sold any of the houses. He asked for an extension, gave him an extension. At the end of the extension period, the houses still weren't sold, and the contract expired, and basically that person hadn't sold anything. And as it turned out, he found out through the process that person was a wholesaler, was not a cash buyer, didn't buy any of the properties, which was a little, he was a little offended because he felt that during that 45-day period, he could have actually marketed those houses and may have potentially missed out on other cash buyer opportunities. So he was a little leery of wholesalers at that point, which, I'm sitting there at the meeting thinking, well, okay, so I'm a wholesaler, and I hope he doesn't just end the meeting and say thanks for the coffee. But he didn't. So through our dialogue, once I started to get that, vibe back from him, that feedback back from him, I decided to pivot a little bit and basically state my offer this way. I said, okay, I do understand. So here's what I propose. We have actually 8 properties. So 2 were off the table. Actually, 3 were off the table. We had 7 properties. Here's what I propose. I am very interested in the 2 properties that were tenant occupied. I would like to get those houses under contract. My daughter can write the contract on Tuesday. And I am going to talk to my funding representative, my funding agent, and apply for funding. If I'm not able to, for whatever reason, qualify for funding, I will market those 2 houses to the wholesale community as tenant occupied rental properties, because there may be a specific niche of investors, cash buyers, who are looking for tenant occupied properties to build their portfolio. And if I'm either successfully able to obtain funding or successfully able to market those properties to cash buyers who are looking for investment properties with tenants, then at the end of that process, reapproach him and allow me to take a look at the next 2 properties on the list and then basically attack them 2 properties at a time. And he thought about it for a second, and he thought that was a good idea. So I'm kind of, as usual, I'm in these situations where I'm attempting to do something new with no experience, and thinking, falling back on the, research that I had been doing, falling back on all the countless videos that I had been doing, as well as the feedback from my daughter. It worked. So as it turns out, on Tuesday, which is the business day after the holiday weekend, we will be writing a contract on the 2 properties with the tenants. I spoke with my funding agent, Paul, over the weekend, and he sent me the application for funding. I'll be taking a look at that, myself here in a minute, filling out those applications based on the market value of those 2 properties and the funding criteria that this particular company uses. I'm pretty sure I can qualify for 100% funding, give or take a couple of $1,000s of application fees and or closing costs, which I'll cover that with my personal cash. So a very small personal investment. I'm on the verge of acquiring these 2 properties with tenants with a very small personal investment. And I'm going to actually do a whole separate video on the funding product, because it's a very unique product. I met Paul through a Facebook group. We've had a couple of conversations about funding, about becoming a funding agent as well. And as I'm out again, finding properties, coming across deals, I'm able to now do a pretty good assessment on whether or not these properties, based on their value, their market value, fit within the model of the funding model, I should say, that will allow me to personally purchase these properties with very little personal cash and very little personal investment. And then combined with, at some point when my business credit from Funding Grow finally kicks in, I'll then have more opportunity to go out and find properties that fit the funding model, as well as now I'll have a decent amount of business credit that I can use, credit cards that I can use for my down payment. So it's all coming together. It's all coming together within 2 to 3 weeks. Actually, now we're going to write a 30-day contract. So basically within the 30-day contract, I will be in a position to become an actual owner of investment properties. The funding process, once we're approved, will take about 3 weeks, and I will be a real estate owner. I will be basically I will be a real estate investor. I already own a house. I'll be a real estate investor. So, as you can imagine, I couldn't be more excited. My daughter and I were talking the other day, and we basically kind of came to the same conclusion. She's also building her investment business as well outside of her real estate agency, real estate agent, business, and we basically came to the same conclusion that how amazing it is that we, one, can basically create a whole business model with cash flow potential from our brains, just from our head, from thinking, researching, reading, and getting out there and executing steps, making it happen. Took the first step and took the second step. Now I'm meeting with property owners. I'm negotiating pricing. I'm making offers on properties. I've met with funding agents. We've met with business credit builders. We're just putting all the steps together to set ourselves up for in the best possible scenario, so that we're able to make our real estate investment and have properties that are, again, cash flowing properties for our business, which is our goal, and over time build that real estate portfolio that will, in my case, allow me to retire early, which is my big goal. So kind of wanted to talk about that a little bit today, and how exciting this is, especially with this new funding partner that I've connected with. That really is an interesting model that's going to allow me to get these 2 properties under contract and funded, and make myself an owner of real estate. And I had a goal to get that done by the end of June. June is now over. However, guys, I'm still excited. Within the next few weeks, I would have hit that goal, and again made the connection, built a rapport with this property owner, which will then potentially lead me to able to acquire or wholesale, more than likely wholesale, 5 additional properties. Couldn't be happier. I hope something that I've talked about in this video, in my previous videos, has helped you or inspired you. Mobile notaries, loan signing agents, just think about it. The knowledge and skills that we've learned in this industry is very valuable. We've literally been paid money to learn the real estate investing, real estate document, real estate industry, the paper flow, the document flow, the signing part of the business, the mortgage document part of the business. It all basically has now accumulated to a point where I'm able to sit down with experienced investors, seasoned investors, and have a conversation with them at the table. And I'm speaking the same terms and using the same terms and understanding the terminology as well. Because of my, the experience that I've learned over the last year and a half as a loan signing agent. Is valuable information, valuable knowledge, guys. I couldn't be more excited. I know many of you are in the same position that I am with your loan signing agent business. I've had a few subscribers comment on some videos that they've they thought about wholesaling, or they actually dabbled in wholesaling before and decided to quit. I'm sorry, there are people popping fireworks out there. It's a holiday weekend, 4th of July weekend. That they've dabbled in wholesaling, or they've dabbled in, maybe thought about real estate investing before, but they didn't know how to get started. They didn't know the best steps. They were maybe not comfortable with cold calling or, approaching strangers. But when I tell you guys, there's strategies and there's ways that you can do so and be comfortable and be successful and build up your confidence and your knowledge and experience as you're doing it. If I tell you that if I can do it, you can do it. Trust me, that is a very bona fide and true statement. So we will get these 2 houses under contract next week, and I'm going to be working with my funding partner as well, and hopefully within the next 2 to 3 weeks, I'll be an actual property investment property owner, an actual investment property owner. And as I speak, and I kind of get distracted at the end of my videos because I have so much to talk about sometimes, as I speak, there are 2, besides the 7 that me and this particular investor have, dialogued about, there are 2 apartment complexes, a 4-unit and a 5-unit apartment complex. One is in a prime location right across the street from the university in our area, and the other is about maybe 2 miles from where I live, all tenant occupied, fully renovated. They're listed on the MLS. However, I'm pretty sure, because one's been on the market for 22 days now, it's been about 4 days now, 26 days, I may be in a position to put an offer on one of those apartment complexes, if not both, once I understand the funding model and get a little bit more details on how I can negotiate a better offer on the 2 apartment complexes that gets the price down low enough where I can again qualify for almost 100% funding. I'll give you guys an update on that as well. Alrighty guys, if you have any questions or comments, please drop it in the comment section. I appreciate you staying with me for this lengthy video. So many more opportunities present themselves for me. I haven't even scratched the surface of the opportunity that's in my city and my area for acquiring properties and wholesaling, flipping, owning properties, short-term rentals. There's so much opportunity, and I will keep you guys abreast and updated every step of the way as I continue on this journey. Thanks for watching. It's the Country Notary. Talk to y'all soon.